All right, let's dive into Stoicism. We're ditching the togas and going for practical wisdom today. We're looking at 12 Stoic principles from this article. It's called 12 Stoic Principles for Immediate Life Transformation. And we're going to see how they can work in your life, like right now.
These principles might be ancient, but they're surprisingly relevant, even to the modern world. It's like the Stoics knew about our 21st century anxieties all along.
Okay, so first up is focus on what you can control. This one really resonates with me. Ever been stuck in traffic, like totally stressing about being late?
Oh yeah, all the time.
The Stoics would say, hey, the traffic jam itself is totally out of your control, but how you react to, well, that's all you...
It's a subtle shift in perspective, but it's powerful. Think about it. Instead of fuming about the traffic, you could use that time to listen to a podcast, maybe even this one.
Ooh, meta. But seriously, the Stoics had this practice called premeditatio malorum, where they'd mentally rehearse potential setbacks. Not to be all doom and gloom, but to be prepared, you know? It's like a mental fire drill.
Exactly. Yeah. It wasn't about dwelling on the negative, but more about anticipating challenges and thinking about how to turn them into opportunities. Let's say you're about to give a big presentation. How could you use this technique?
I think I'd probably try to visualize things going wrong, the tech failing, getting super nervous, maybe even tripping on my way up to the stage. But instead of freaking out, I'd try to pre-plan how to handle those situations, like have backup slides ready, practice some calming breaths, and maybe wear some comfy shoes so I don't trip.
There you go. You just applied premeditatio malorum to a real situation. That's what's so cool about Stoicism. It's not just a philosophy, it's like a toolkit.
I'm starting to get this. All right, let's move on to principle number 2. Embrace obstacles as opportunities. I'll be honest, this one's a bit hard to accept, especially when things aren't going my way.
I hear you, but the Stoics, they saw obstacles not as roadblocks, but as stepping stones on the path to growth.
Right, like that Marcus Aurelius quote, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. But how do we apply this in real life?
Well, let's take a look at a famous Stoic.
Yeah.
Epictetus. He was born into slavery and experienced exile. Yet, he became one of the most influential Stoic philosophers. His obstacles didn't define him, they shaped him.
You know, I had a similar experience a while back. I had this huge presentation at work, and the tech totally crashed right before I was supposed to start. I was mortified.
Oh no.
But you know what? I took a deep breath, I went old school with the whiteboard, and ended up having a much more engaging conversation with the audience.
That's not just luck. You were applying focus on what you can control.
Yeah.
You couldn't fix the tech in that moment, but you adapted. You owned the situation. You even turned that obstacle into an opportunity to connect with your audience, and in a more authentic way, too.
Wow, I never thought of it like that. Okay, so moving on to principle number 3, live in the present moment. This one reminds me a lot of mindfulness, which is a really popular idea these days.
Yeah, there's definitely connection there. The Stoics were all about recognizing that dwelling on the past or worrying about the future, it steals our joy from the present moment.
Right, but with our always-on culture and social media and the 24/7 news cycle, it's easy to get pulled in so many directions. How did the Stoics handle this without smartphones and notifications?
Their tool was simple awareness. Marcus Aurelius actually wrote about this. He said, do not dwell in the past. Do not dream of the future. Concentrate the mind on the present moment.
That's great advice. So what's one Stoic-inspired tactic I could try to be more present? Because you know my to-do list is already calling my name.
Okay, try this. The next time you feel your thoughts getting carried away, just pause. Notice 5 things you can see, 4 things you can feel, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. It's a simple grounding exercise. It helps you reconnect with your senses and the present moment.
I like that. I'm adding that one to my mental toolkit. Okay, now on to principle number 4.
Build self-discipline. This one feels especially challenging in our world of instant gratification. It is. But the Stoics believed that true freedom doesn't come from constantly indulging. It comes from having the discipline to align your actions with your values and with your long-term goals as well. It's about making conscious choices, even when they're tough.
That makes sense. I used to be a total impulse shopper, but I started tracking my spending and setting a budget. It wasn't easy, but now I feel much more in control of my finances.
That's a great example of self-discipline in action. You didn't just wish for better finances, you took concrete steps to get there. The Stoics would be proud.
So, for those of you listening, what's one area where you could work on building self-discipline? Maybe it's getting up a little earlier, or eating healthier, or finally starting that creative project you've been putting off.
Remember, small steps lead to big changes. Start with a small goal that you can actually achieve, and then celebrate your progress as you go.
Okay, now for principle number 5, develop emotional resilience. We all experience so many emotions, it's part of being human. But how do we avoid being totally controlled by them?
The Stoics weren't about suppressing your emotions. They were more about understanding them and responding to them in a constructive way. They'd say something like, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters.
That sounds familiar.
It's Epictetus again.
So it's about choosing our response even when we're feeling totally overwhelmed?
Exactly. Think of it like this. You get some really tough feedback at work. It's perfectly natural to feel hurt or defensive at first, but instead of just reacting impulsively, you could take a pause. Take a few deep breaths and ask yourself, is there any truth to this feedback? Can I use it to learn and grow?
It's like hitting pause on the emotional roller coaster and then choosing a more thoughtful way to respond.
Precisely. That's emotional resilience in action. You're not ignoring your emotions, you're acknowledging them, and then choosing how you want to respond. It's a practice, not perfection. And that kind of leads us to a principle that might seem a bit daunting at first. Memento mori, or remember you will die. I know it sounds morbid, but it's actually meant to be empowering.
Okay, I'm intrigued, but also a little scared. How can thinking about death be a good thing?
Well, the Stoics weren't about dwelling on the darkness. They were more about using this awareness of our mortality to fuel a more meaningful life, Marcus Aurelius had a good quote about this. He said, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think.
So it's about realizing that our time is limited and not wasting it on things that don't really matter.
Exactly. What projects have you been putting off? What relationships have you maybe not been nurturing like you should? What dreams are just gathering dust? Memento mori kind of pushes us to prioritize what's truly important.
It makes you ask yourself, if I knew I only had a year left, what would I do differently? That's a powerful question.
It is. Now let's move on to something a little lighter, and it's a principle that I think is close to my heart. Practice gratitude.
Gratitude is a hot topic these days. But the Stoics were on to something centuries ago. Why do you think they placed such importance on gratitude?
Well, for them, it was about shifting our focus from what we lack to what we have. Even in the face of hardship, Marcus Aurelius wrote about waking up and appreciating the simple act of being alive, to breathe, to think, to experience the world.
And modern science backs this up too. Gratitude has been shown to reduce stress, help you sleep better, and even build stronger relationships. It's like a happiness booster shot.
It's not just about feeling good, though. Gratitude can be a powerful tool for dealing with difficult situations. When you focus on what you're thankful for, it's hard to get pulled down by negativity.
I see what you mean. So if I'm dealing with a frustrating coworker, instead of getting caught up in resentment, I could try to find something to appreciate about them. Maybe they're always on time, or they make really good coffee. It's about shifting my perspective.
Exactly. You're not denying that there's a challenge, but you're choosing to focus on the more positive side of things. It's like a Stoic power move.
All right, I'm ready to level up my gratitude game. Next principle, please.
Okay, let's talk about striving for personal excellence. The Stoics were big on this, but not in like a competitive way. It was more about living in alignment with your values and constantly seeking self-improvement.
They weren't about being perfect. They were about progress.
Right. Marcus Aurelius said, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. It's a call to action, to embody our ideals instead of just debating them.
I think that's where some people get stuck. They get stuck in analysis paralysis, overthinking what it means to be good instead of just doing the things that align with their values.
Right, it's about walking the walk, not just talking the talk. So for you, what does personal excellence look like? What values do you want to prioritize?
That's a good question. For me, I think it's about honesty, kindness, and always trying to learn and grow. It's about being the type of person I admire, even when nobody's watching.
Those are powerful guiding principles. Now here's a principle that can be pretty tough, especially in our age of social media. Care less what others think. Easier said than done, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's so easy to get caught up in comparing ourselves to others or looking for validation online and just constantly worrying about what other people think.
The Stoics knew how pointless that was. Marcus Aurelius wrote about how absurd it is that we value the opinions of others more than our own.
It's like we've outsourced our self-worth to the internet. But how do we escape that?
It starts with being aware of it. Notice those times when you're seeking validation from external sources. Ask yourself, Why do I care so much about what this person thinks? Does their opinion even align with my values?
It's about taking back our power and remembering that true confidence comes from within, not from likes and comments.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. Here's a principle that's all about going with the flow. Accept change. The Stoics saw change as a fundamental part of life, something to be embraced rather than resisted.
It's like the changing seasons. We don't fight the transition from summer to fall. We appreciate the beauty of each season.
That's a great analogy. Change can be challenging.
Yeah.
But it's often in those times of upheaval that we grow the most.
And that's where the Stoic idea of amor fati comes in, which means love of fate. It's about accepting what life throws at us, even the tough stuff, and making peace with it.
It's a radical idea, but also powerful. Instead of saying, why me? We can ask, what can I learn from this?
So how can we apply this to our own lives? What's a practical way to embrace change instead of fearing it?
Think about a recent change that's happened in your life. Maybe a job transition, or a move, or a shift in a relationship. Instead of focusing on the negatives, try to identify the potential opportunities that this change has created. What new possibilities has it opened up? What can you learn and grow from?
It's about changing our perspective. Instead of seeing change as a threat, we can see it as a chance for growth and transformation.
Okay, let's move on to principle number 11. Practice compassion and empathy. The Stoics emphasize this a lot. They emphasize the interconnectedness of all humanity.
Yeah, it's that idea that we're all in this together, even when it doesn't feel like it. They believed in treating everyone with kindness and understanding, even those who might be difficult.
Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What brings no benefit to the hive brings none to the bee." It reminds us that our actions have a ripple effect, and that being kind and compassionate benefits not only others, but also ourselves.
So it's not just about being nice, it's about recognizing that our well-being is connected to the well-being of others.
Exactly. And empathy is a key part of this. It's about trying to see the world from another person's perspective, to understand their motivations and their struggles, even if we don't agree with their choices.
You know, I used to get so frustrated with a coworker. He was constantly interrupting me. It drove me crazy. But then I took a step back and I tried to understand where he was coming from. Turns out he was dealing with a lot of anxiety, and interrupting was kind of his way of coping.
That's a great example of how empathy can change a situation.
Yeah.
It's not about excusing bad behavior. It's about trying to understand the reasons behind it. It creates space for more compassion and a chance for connection.
It's like that saying, everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Be kind, always.
Beautifully put. And finally, we come to the last principle for this deep dive. Reflect and review regularly. This one's all about self-awareness and continuous improvement.
The Stoics were big on journaling and self-reflection. Why was that so important to them?
They saw it as a way to really examine their thoughts and actions and emotions, identifying areas where they could grow, and learning from their mistakes. It was about holding themselves accountable to their values and striving to be just a little bit better every day.
Marcus Aurelius' Meditations is a perfect example. It's basically his personal journal, filled with reflections on Stoic principles and how he was trying to live those principles out.
It's really insightful, even today. And Seneca, another Stoic philosopher, he recommended reviewing your day like it was a play, seeing where you did well and where you could improve.
So it's not about beating ourselves up for our mistakes. It's about learning from our experiences and figuring out how we can do better in the future. It's like having a personal coach in our heads.
And it doesn't need to be complicated. You could just take a few minutes at the end of each day to reflect. Think about what went well, what could have gone better, and what you learned. Maybe jot down a few thoughts in a journal, or talk it over with a friend.
Yeah, it's like taking stock of our strengths and weaknesses and using that to make better choices in the future.
It's a continuous process of self-discovery and growth. And that's what I love about Stoicism. It's a journey, not a destination.
So we've covered a lot in this deep dive, from focusing on what we can control to embracing obstacles. What would you say is the most important thing our listeners should take away from all this?
I'd say it's that. Stoicism gives us a framework for dealing with life's ups and downs, with more resilience, wisdom, and inner peace. It's not about avoiding challenges. It's about facing them head on, with courage and grace.
It's about realizing that we actually have more power than we think. We can't always control what happens, but we can control how we react.
And that's where our true freedom lies.
Such a powerful message. So to our listeners, we encourage you to keep exploring Stoicism. Read the works of Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca, and try incorporating these principles into your own lives. even if it's just one small step at a time.
Yeah, and remember, you don't have to do it alone. Connect with others who are interested in Stoicism too. Share your insights, ask questions, and support each other on this journey of growth and self-discovery.
We'd love to hear from you too. What resonated with you most from this deep dive? Which Stoic practices are you excited to try? Share your thoughts with our community. Let's keep the conversation going.
Until next time, be well and live with intention.